This is my oral presentation for ENG200 SL2. My name is Reid, and this is my oral presentation for A Game of Pride. Hello all, and thank you for taking the time today to come be my willing and patient audience. A Game of Pride is a story I wrote based on an actual event that took place in my life, as some of you already know. Your accounts of conflict that I decided cannot be avoided, and was a good first step towards my refusal to being taken advantage by others. The conflict took place during my summer vacation at a local park. It was between a group of thugs and my group of friends. Here's how it all started. Look, it's them. We stopped at the chain link fence and I wrapped my fingers into it, feeling the cool metal slip between my fingers. It was a welcome change from the oppressive heat of the July sun beating down on us. As we sauntered along our usual path to 7-Eleven alongside the park, I saw something that drove me into a rage. I became incensed, stopping about like an oaf and kicking the fence. I know that's my ball. I'm telling you, I saw Shoeboy walk away with it. Craig and Peter exchanged a look. Both decided together it wouldn't be worth it to argue the point. So what if it is, Zach said with a sneer. It's not like you're going to get it back. The ball had been missing for a couple weeks. It had mysteriously disappeared one day as we were playing baseball at the schoolyard. It just so happened to occur at the same time the 163 thugs left for the day. The 163s were a group of early high school kids like us. But they couldn't be more the opposite of our upstanding youth group. I knew immediately that it was them, and it made me see red. We had always known about their reputation, but since they were all from the same neighborhood, we had managed to coexist. We even played the occasional touch football game or basketball game with minimal conflict. But on that day, they crossed the line. They stole my football, knowing the implication. It was a smack in the face and a slight on my honor, and it would not be allowed to stand. I decided immediately we were going to get it back. Let's go. We're going to get it from them, I declared to my 3 cohorts. Are you kidding me? You're going to go ask Crazy Stabbing Eddie for your ball back? Peter replied in shock, as if I had just told him I was his father. We'll play them for it, I shot back with no hesitation. To my surprise, it wasn't met with vehement opposition, but rather a unilateral decision to issue the challenge. We worked purposefully towards the opening in the fence and made our way onto the battlefield. We crossed the unkempt and spotty grass and approached where our 4 opponents now stopped and looked to see who was interrupting their game. For those of you who know me, this was a pretty unusual approach for me to take. I'm not the type of person you would normally call confrontational or outgoing or even very personable, but something inside me that day snapped. I remember the feeling of anger boiling as I watched them play with my ball. I think my friends were just as angry as me, which is why they were willing to get involved. We were no stranger to the 163s, but this was definitely uncharted territory. Let's see what happened next. I got uncomfortably close to Shoeboy, trying my best to be intimidating. Hey man, why don't you give me my ball back? I asserted in a loud voice. I know you took it from me at the schoolyard. This isn't your ball, man, he said with a stupid grin on his face. I got this ball from my cousin. I felt the rage build up inside me. I imagined it creeping up my neck to my face, turning it red like fire. I know you're not going to give it back, so why don't we just play for the ball? If you win, keep it, but if I win, you give me the ball back. He turned and looked at his friends, who shared an arrogant look of self-assured success and turned back smiling. You're on. We established the rules. It would be a game to 5, each touchdown being worth 1 point. We set up school bags and hats to mark off the end zones, establishing the goal line. We decided immediately it would be full contact. Nobody was going to leave here without paying the price for the ball. I welcomed the opportunity to get my payback for their transgressions, and I knew that they had no intention of letting it go without a fight. They had bad reputations, as Eddie's name had suggested, but they were basically the same age as us. Our past games were always close, but they had never been tackle games where aggressiveness and nastiness dictated the outcome. My team huddled up and gave each other looks of apprehension. Let's do this shit, guys, I said as I stamped the ground trying to get them fired up. And I steeled my nerves as we prepared for the opening kickoff. At this point, I think we were all a little nervous. We had played our share of Kill the Carrier and King of the Hill. We would never play the tackle football game against people who were certified criminals, even if it was just small time. I think it was almost like autopilot, and the thoughts and words just sort of fell out. The next thing we knew, we were standing on the field, and the game was beginning. That's when the fun really began. We flipped a coin and determined who would be getting the ball first. It was them. We marched to our opposing side of the fields like 4 soldiers facing down the enemy, with the battle lust beginning to wash over us. I felt my stomach knot up as Craig threw the ball off as hard as he could to their waiting arms. Eddie caught the ball and started out slowly as his friends made a moving wall of flesh in front of him. Our team was running full steam ahead, and time slowed in front of me, and I saw with perfect clarity the dust being kicked up by 8 teenagers on a collision course for each other. Zach made first impact, slamming into Shoeboy. His momentum carried both into the blockers in front of Eddie. Peter followed quickly after, and although he gave up at least 50 pounds on Eddie, he was strong and just a little bit crazy. He wrapped his arms around Eddie and slammed him to the floor, and I felt the impact reverberate in my feet. A wave of strength washed over me. I felt the rush of adrenaline realization that we stood a chance, and I felt the rush of competitiveness grip my insides and turn them to fire as I was ready to get to action. "Nice hit," I exclaimed as I smacked Peter's shoulder and lined up for the next play. I chose Shoeboy as my man and bent forward in front of him, giving him a look that said, "You're mine." Alvaro, who was playing quarterback, called hike, and Shoeboy ran horizontally to the left towards him for a handoff. He took the ball from his hands and ran around the left side of the field as I came forward towards him with malicious intent. I lowered my head and I put my shoulders forward, feeling the left one make impact with his stomach. I relished the way it gave way as I stopped his momentum and drove him backward into the ground. I heard the whoosh of air come from his lips as I landed on top of him. I picked myself up with a smile on my face and I turned back towards my team. I have to admit, that first hit felt really good. It was like all the pent-up anger I had was unleashed all at once. After that, it sort of felt like a normal game, and even though we were getting our share of bumps and bruises, I think we loved every second of it. From here, the story speeds up to the conclusion of the game. Let's take a look at how that went. The game was a tough one. We gave out our share of punishment, but we also took our lumps too. On one particularly scary play, Peter made a cut around Eddie, who dove wildly for his legs. He hit him at an awkward angle, and at first glance, his knee buckled in a seemingly gruesome way. It didn't appear to faze him, though, and he bounced back up like a cat and sprinted back for the line for the next play. By the time the game was tied up 4-4, everyone on the field was pretty beat up. Some were walking with a noticeable limp, others were holding their arms close to their bodies because it hurt to hold them up. We were giving it our all, and so were they. Our team had the ball at midfield. The next point would decide the winner of the game. There was a strong smell of sweat and grass that permeated my olfactory. I wiped the sweat away from my brow, and I looked at Craig. "Throw me the ball," I said with conviction. "I'm ending this now." He nodded, and we approached the line as 4 men with a purpose. I looked Shoeboy in the eyes, and I thought to myself, now is the moment I show you not to mess with me. I heard Craig calling hike, muffled by my thoughts, as if from another room. I ran straight at Shoeboy. I pushed into him hard as he tried to stop me from picking up speed. We tangled for a moment, and I managed to push him to the side as I started to churn my legs. I pushed forward as hard as I could, feeling the toes of my shoes digging into the chewed-up ground. After about 10 feet, I turned my head to look back at Craig, who had already released the ball into a high-reaching arc. It was approaching me on its way down, and I stretched my arms forward. The ball sailed over my head and into my hands as I pulled it towards my body. I felt the heat of the breath of 3 pursuers as they urged themselves towards me, grabbing at me like snakes for their prey. I felt a hand grabbing at my shirt as one caught up to my side and put his shoulder into my ribs. I forced my weight back into him and gave it one final push for the goal line as we tumbled down into a mass on the ground. My right side was greeted by the unforgiving ground as 3 people piled on top of me. I felt their weight crushing me, and I pushed them off with all my might, searching for the burgundy school bag that indicated the end zone. I looked back slightly, and I saw that I had passed it. A rush of sheer joy gripped me, and I spiked the ball into the ground, putting my exclamation point on the victory. I turned to my friends, and we celebrated briefly before turning to our opponents. We met their gaze, and we shared a moment of mutual respect and camaraderie. We shook their hands, and we met on equal ground. And there you have it. We walked away victorious and mostly unhurt. I laid claim to my prize, and I took my football back. After this game, we would go on to play the 163s a few more times over the years in bigger and bigger games, until finally Zach shattered his nose, which pretty much was the last time we played tackle football. That day is something I will never forget, not just because of how much fun the game was, but because of how much it meant to all of us. We stood up to the neighborhood bullies, and we walked away with our heads held high. I hope you all enjoyed the story, and thank you for your time. Just to introduce you to my audience, we have my wife Noelle, my brother Chris, and Crazy Peter, who took down Crazy Stab and Eddie. Thank you very much.